You were never meant to be soft. You were forged, beaten, bent, then hardened. The world didn't give you kindness, it gave you war. And somehow, through all of it, you're still standing. You're still breathing. You're still here. They thought they buried you. They thought the silence meant you'd been defeated. But you weren't gone. You were evolving. Every scar they gave you, every door they slammed, every whisper behind your back, it didn't kill you. It carved you. It sharpened you. You didn't fall off. You disappeared into the abyss and became something else. Something cold. Something they can't comprehend. Something they now fear. You see, they never understood the damage they did when they pushed you too far, when they mocked you, ignored you, played with your name like it was nothing. They laughed, but they never saw the eyes you wore when you walked away, the way your hands shook, the storm inside your chest. They never saw the nights you couldn't sleep, the moments where your soul broke and reassembled itself in silence. They never saw the transformation, only the explosion. And now, look at them. Look at the ones who doubted you. They whisper your name now with caution. They mention your eyes with nervous awe. Because you didn't just come back. You returned with fire in your veins and war in your breath. They can't ignore you now, because you became undeniable. You didn't ask for a seat at the table. You built your own empire and made the world watch. And now, they tremble when they hear your footsteps. They don't realize what it took. The nights of self-hate, the loneliness so thick it felt like drowning, the heartbreak, the loss, the hunger that devoured you from the inside out. You walked through darkness that would have eaten most people alive, but you wore it like armor. And now, when you speak, your voice doesn't shake. It thunders. You don't beg anymore. You take. You don't prove anymore. You show. You became the ghost in their nightmares, the one they hoped they'd never have to face again. This wasn't luck. This wasn't chance. This was rage. This was pain focused into power. This was discipline. This was obsession. This was crawling when you couldn't walk, running when you were already bleeding, rising when your legs couldn't even hold you. This was revenge in its purest, most beautiful form. Not in words, not in violence, but in evolution. You became everything they said you couldn't be. Everything they feared you would become if you ever found your strength. You walked through fire and came out colder. You buried your old self and rose from the grave with red in your eyes and silence on your lips. You took that dark path, the one they warned you against. And now, you're not just back, you're beyond reach. Let them fear you, let them talk, let them guess how you did it, because they'll never understand. They didn't live in your war. They didn't hear the thoughts you fought every night. They didn't feel your pulse when the world closed in on you. They weren't there when you screamed into the dark, and nothing screamed back. You were alone, and you became something savage in the silence. You don't smile like you used to. You don't walk the same. Your eyes are heavy with truths no one else can carry. You became steel. You became myth. You're not chasing them anymore. They're chasing the memory of a version of you they'll never get back. And that's why they fear you. Because they know. Deep down, they know. You went somewhere they didn't dare go, and you came back with power they can't control. You're not one of them anymore. You're something else. And they can't ignore you now. They can't ignore the silence you carry now, because it speaks louder than the noise they tried to drown you in. It's in the way you move, measured, focused, dangerous. You're not loud anymore. You're lethal. Your calm unsettles them. Your presence shifts the atmosphere, because there's no pretending anymore. The mask is gone, the softness buried. What remains is the product of agony endured, without mercy and pressure, survived without breaking. You became immune to their games, immune to the lies, immune to the praise too, because you remember all of it. The fake concern, the smiles with knives hidden beneath them, the silence when you needed someone most. You remember who turned away, who watched you drown, who fed your pain and called it tough love. And now you owe them nothing, no explanations, no performances, no validation. You made it without them, and that's what terrifies them. You were never supposed to rise, that's the truth. You were supposed to stay broken, trapped under the weight of their doubt. You were supposed to fade, but you chose pain over peace, discipline over comfort. You burned every escape route, stood alone in the fire, and dared the world to try and extinguish you. They don't make people like you. You don't happen by accident. You're born of devastation and driven by hunger, so relentless, it devours weakness on sight. And now, you walk with a different energy, one that can't be taught. It's earned. It's built on sleepless nights and promises made in silence. You don't just talk about it, you are it. You embody the grind, the refusal, the relentless pressure to become. You turned your pain into momentum and your solitude into sanctuary. While they were busy watching each other, comparing, envying, you were building. Quietly, relentlessly. And now they look up, and you're there. On the throne they mocked, wearing the crown they said would never fit you. This is what they fear. Not the power, but the proof. The proof that someone like you could make it. That pain could become purpose. That silence could speak louder than screams. That someone could take every hit and rise anyway. They fear your story, because it exposes their excuses. Your grind shatters their comfort. Your rise mocks their complacency. And it's too late to stop you now. You've become a storm too large to contain. Let them watch. Let them whisper. Let them pretend they were always in your corner. You know the truth, and that truth is your weapon now. Every fake friend, every missed call, every empty apology, you carry that with you, not with hate, but with power. They thought they were cutting you, but they were chiseling a masterpiece. They thought they were breaking you, but you were breaking through. They gave you darkness, and you turned it into clarity. You took rock bottom and used it as a launching pad. Now you don't flinch. You don't hesitate. You don't fold. Because there's nothing they can do to you now that hasn't already been done. You've been through the worst and survived. And that kind of survivor, that kind of soul, you can't stop that. You can't shame that. You can't control that. That kind of soul changes rooms, ends bloodlines, rewrites legacy. They call you cold now, unreachable, distant. But you're not cold. You're focused. You're not unreachable. You've simply raised your standards. You're not distant. You've just outgrown the noise. You don't operate like the rest of them anymore because you're not one of them anymore. You're a weapon now, sharpened by experience, forged by betrayal, hardened by time, and they can't hold a blade like you without cutting themselves. This is the era of your dominance. No more hesitation, no more explaining, no more waiting. The dark path you took, it wasn't a mistake. It was the only way. It led you through hell, yeah, but it also burned away everything false. And now, what's left is pure, real, unstoppable. You walk differently now because you carry something heavier than most. Purpose, pain, proof. That weight is yours, and it no longer slows you down. It propels you. You're not just building a legacy, you are the legacy. You're not chasing dreams, You're fulfilling prophecies whispered only to those who've suffered enough to hear them. And when they see you now, they don't see the struggle. They don't see the breakdowns, the cold nights, the silent screams. They only see the power, the presence, the mystery. You became a shadow they can't predict and a light they can't escape. And that's why they fear you, because they should. You did what most can't. You turned pain into identity, rejection into reputation. You stopped begging for respect and made it non-negotiable. You stopped knocking on doors and started breaking them off their hinges. You no longer ask, you take, because no one gave you a damn thing. You earned every ounce, every inch. Every whisper of your name now carries the weight of everything you endured. They call you obsessed, but they weren't there when obsession was all you had. They call you ruthless, but they forget. The world showed you no mercy, so now you owe them none. They see the beast, but they ignore the birth. The nights you cried so hard you couldn't breathe. The mornings you had to pull yourself from the floor. The times you almost gave in. They forget, but you remember, and that memory is your blade now. And now they fear you, not because you're violent, but because you're inevitable. You became the very thing they tried to keep you from, and they can't ignore you now. The day you stopped waiting for someone to save you was the day the game changed. You stopped looking for approval. You stopped needing witnesses. You buried your doubts beside your fears and carved your name into the silence. You became your own weapon, your own reason, your own goddamn rescue. And that kind of power, that kind of terrifying self-reliance, it can't be coached, it can't be copied. It comes only from falling so deep into the void that you stop begging for light and start learning how to see in the dark. You stopped asking questions. You started making statements. You stopped explaining the war inside your chest. You started living like every heartbeat was a drum of vengeance, a declaration that you survived what was meant to finish you. And they can feel it now, when you walk in, when you speak, when you look them in the eye. There's something in you they don't recognize, because it was never built for them. It was forged in a place they were too weak to go, and they sense it, that edge, that danger, that quiet chaos underneath your skin. Because when you've lost everything, you learn what truly matters. You learn that love without loyalty is poison, that friends without presence are ghosts, that family without support is fiction. You learn that no one's coming to save you. No one's staying just because you're hurting. No one's showing up when the lights go out unless you've already become your own fire. You burned for so long alone that you became flame itself. You don't need light. You are light, not the soft, comforting kind, the kind that blinds, the kind that sets the room ablaze. And still, you're not done. That's the part they don't understand. They think this version of you is the final form, but they don't know you're still evolving, still hunting, still sharpening your soul every morning like a blade. You wake up with hunger in your chest and ghosts behind your eyes. You don't want revenge anymore. You want results. You want to go so far they can't even lie to themselves about your success. You want to become so undeniable that their denial becomes a joke. Let them laugh. Let them scroll past. Let them think they know you from your silence, from the filtered version of your chaos. Because when the storm finally breaks, and it will, they'll realize too late that you were never playing. That every word you swallowed, every tear you hid, every second you kept quiet was you preparing. And now, they're out of time. You gave them chances. You gave them warnings. Now you give them outcomes. You don't fit in anymore because you were never meant to. You were meant to stand apart, to become something no system could control, no crowd could absorb, no enemy could break. You're the glitch in their matrix, the scar in their fantasy, The reminder that not everyone folds, that some people walk through fire and come out colder. You don't move for comfort now, you move for legacy, for revenge against your old self. For every second you wasted believing you needed their permission to become great, you wear your pain like armor now, your failure like fuel, your fear like a leash you've snapped. Nothing holds you anymore, not doubt, not shame, not guilt. You killed the version of you that cared about being liked. You buried the version of you that needed saving. What walks the earth now is untamed, unapologetic, unstoppable, and they can't speak your name without swallowing regret, because when they ignored you, they were betting on your weakness. They were hoping you'd stay small, quiet, dependent, but they didn't account for your rage. They didn't know how deep your drive goes. They didn't realize you don't back down. You dig in. You go darker. You go deeper. When most would quit, you double down. That's the thing about monsters born from pain. They don't need applause. They just need an excuse. You gave yourself that excuse. You looked in the mirror and told yourself the truth. No one is coming. No one owes you a thing. No one will ever understand what's burning inside your bones. And in that moment, you stopped needing sympathy. You started needing results. You started treating every second as if it owed you something. You stopped waiting, and you started taking. And now, they want to act surprised. Now, they want to act like they didn't see this coming. Let them be shocked. Let them sit in their own disbelief. Because this isn't luck. This is what happens when you suffer correctly, when you suffer with purpose, when you turn breakdowns into blueprints, when you stop whining and start building. You didn't get here by accident. You got here by becoming allergic to excuses. You got here because you decided your pain wasn't going to define you. It was going to refine you. Now look at them, choking on your name, acting brand new. But you remember the doors that stayed shut, the calls that went unanswered, the help that never came. You remember every fake smile, every behind-the-back whisper, every time they said you couldn't, and now they pretend they always believed in you. But it's too late. You're not doing this for them anymore. You're doing it because you had to become the person you needed when you were at your lowest. You had to crawl through hell and eat silence until your voice became volcanic. You had to be overlooked until you became undeniable. You had to be alone until you became enough. And now they're not just watching, they're learning. Learning that some people don't just bounce back. They come back different. They come back sharp, cold, focused. They come back and change the game forever. You're not who you were, and you never will be, nor will be again. That version of you, the soft, unsure, hesitant version, died in the fire. What's left is built from ashes, reconstructed from nothing. And now they stare from a distance because they can't get close without confronting what they did to you. Or worse, what they didn't do. The absence, the silence, the betrayal. And still, you don't hate them. You don't need to. You already won. The fear they carry now is your justice. The success you wear now is your vengeance. Every second you breathe without asking permission is a rebellion. You're not here to prove them wrong anymore. You're here because you don't need their recognition. You've already surpassed it. You've already made peace with the darkness and turned it into your ally. Now, your energy is too real for them, too raw, too intense. You make people uncomfortable, not because you're aggressive, but because you're authentic. You're no longer molding yourself to be palatable. You're no longer shrinking to fit their boxes. You're not diluting yourself for mass consumption. You're pure now, pure drive, pure intent, pure hunger. And it's that purity that makes you dangerous. You're the nightmare they laughed at, now walking with purpose. You're the silence they mocked, now roaring with success. You're the ghost they created, now haunting every room they enter. And it's too late to turn back. You don't want their forgiveness. You don't need their approval. You already built your future without them. Every step forward now is your proof. Every win now is your answer. They can't ignore you now because you've become something terrifying. Not because you're evil, not because you're violent, but because you refuse to die. You refuse to disappear. You refuse to accept your fate. You rewrote it in blood, in sweat, in silence. You turned every no into a fortress, every rejection into a throne. And now they look up and you're sitting on top of everything they said you couldn't have. Let them fear you. You earned that. You are the one they fear.